are now elevating Hooked on Sonics with Bruce and Tom.
And we're live.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another kick-ass episode of Hooked on Sonics. I am one of your two hosts, Bruce, and as always, my brother from another mother, the Toe Capone. This week, we are super pumped and honored to have back on the show the hardest working dude in rock and roll, our friend Keith Roth. He's on to talk about his brand new album, The Law of Diminished Returns, and he's got so many other irons in the fire. He's released, two more albums in a year's time frame. He's an actor. He's got a kick-ass side project, the Rockstrap podcast with Don Jameson. And I'm sure all kinds of shit's going to come up. So, Keith, welcome, man.
It's good to see you guys again. Me and Bruce, we're like sports buddies as well. So we text each other all the time, but it's good to be back on the show. I mean, I think the last time, obviously with the Dictators, right? About 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're big fans of you guys. You guys
Good
are cool.
Deal.
We appreciate it, man.
We do. You know what? It's kind of funny just to kind of mention Bruce was he comes up every other month to take care of his mom and check in on her and stuff and whatnot. And he was like, man, I'm coming up, but help me out. Dick Manitoba show, right outside of Cincinnati in Newport, Kentucky. Caught him at a really, really cool venue that was like a church. He's got good players going on with him. They did a really good set. Bruce was pretty pumped by the set and knew more than I did, obviously. But the openers were really cool too. But the venue, man, I have to say, stole the show for me because it was an old Masonic temple.
Yeah, I know those. Yeah, those are awesome, man.
And there's maybe it was a church. There was organ pieces hanging around and stuff and whatnot. But nonetheless, man, good time, good show. And we actually, on the other side of the venue, there was another bar where they had a small stage set up, and we saw India Ramey, and she blew our freaking doors off for what little bit we got to catch her. So we picked up the album, checked it out, reviewed it here recently, and it was a good time.
I can imagine. I would like to go see Handsome Dick Manitoba play. It's been a minute for sure, but I would like to see the band. They
did a good job, man. They did a good job. The one thing that would really blew my mind, I believe the drummer was somebody from a band that I kept telling, I tell people about all the time, and not a lot of people remember the band is called Circus of Power.
Yeah. Great band.
They were freaking awesome, man, but I don't think they really ever got their due because of the shift and change of music from what was going on during that time, and they didn't somehow get caught up in the grunge scene or whatever happened at that time.
Yeah, and that's a band that could have kind of went on to to be part of what was happening in the early 90s. Definitely. There's a lot of bands in the Lower East Side of New York that could have made, Law and Order was another band that I felt could have, went on with the whole Seattle scene, and a lot of, listen, a lot of New Jersey bands like Monster Magnet, they all thrived during that period, so.
What was Todd Youth's band? I can't remember. Degeneration?
Todd did play with Degeneration. Him and Jesse were good friends for many years. And
somebody told me Todd passed away, man, and that broke my heart, man, because he was such a wonderful person to meet. I met him out on the Danzig tour when they did the Danzig Sam Hain tour.
Great guy, really great guy. Yeah, he did pass away a couple of years ago. Very upsetting to hear that. He was very close with Jesse Malin and my buddy Jimmy Walls, who's married to B.B. Buell. But yeah, Todd was an awesome guitar player. Also played with Glenn Campbell as well.
No kidding.
Yeah, dude, he played with Glenn Campbell.
Todd was badass, dude.
Yeah, he was badass. Danzig. What was
the Sam Hain set?
What's that?
He did the Sam Hain set with Danzig on the Danzig Sam Hain tour.
That's right. That's right.
Fucking balls, dude. Best. If you ask me one of the top 3 shows I've ever seen, I'll always say that show, dude. That'll always go in top 3.
My buddy, I guess you know him as Damien from Sam Hain, but Pete Marshall, who was he played on that Blunt Truth record that we were talking about before the interview. Pete's been part of the Frankenstein 3000 family, because of Sam Hain. Yeah, and then he played with Iggy Pop for 10 years, but him and Todd were great. Yeah, now I'm reflecting about Todd. Also, we mentioned he played with Ace Frehley for a while.
Yeah.
Too as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Todd's badass, dude.
He
rest his soul, man. He was badass for sure.
And as you said, he was a really, really good guy.
Yeah.
Really good dude. Yeah.
When did he play with Ace, Keith?
Anomaly record.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was the Anomaly album. And speaking of that Anomaly record, Derek Hawkins also played.
Yep.
And Derek was also on Frankenstein. He actually plays some stuff on my record, my solo record. But yeah, it's so great that a lot of people from the area, working, because it's like a lot of us have known each other since we were little kids, and to see how everybody, now that we're kind of somewhat grown up, I wouldn't say, it's never Neverland for all of us, but
that's right.
And
yeah,
sadly,
me and Tony just grew out. You guys kind of grew up.
Well, what about Clem Burke passing away? That was another Jersey guy, a couple years ago. And the last time I saw Clem is I was playing with Cheetah Chrome. This was probably maybe even 10 years ago at this point. But it was he was playing with the Flesh Tones, and me and Frank Ferrer, Frank from Guns N' Roses.
Yep.
And Pete Marshall again from Sam Hain were backing up Cheetah, which I've done a few times. And I remember walking up the stairs at the Bowery Electric and just watching Clem Burke just groove. And I mean, he is just such an incredible drummer. And, obviously what he did with Blondie, but, he also played with Iggy Pop and, the Ramones. He was Ramone. He was Elvis Ramone. So that was a bummer here. And, he passed away, yesterday, right?
Yeah.
Brutal.
We're getting to that age, man, which sucks,
I hate to say it, man. I hate becoming at that point in my life where you look at yourself and you go, man, all my heroes are dying. You know what I mean? Like
I thought,
or friends,
Yeah, right. Heroes or friends. Listen, I thought once Lemmy passed away and once David Bowie passed away, very close to each other.
Yeah.
That's when reality set in for me, because Lemmy's not supposed to die. David Bowie's not supposed to die. And then reality just punched me right in the face. And then if you remember, it was like a domino effect. And now, you get a little jaded with it, but
it's funny you mentioned Bowie. I was sitting here talking with my buddy the other night. We were sitting around playing something online or some shit, and he was talking to me about all these cool CDs he had just gathered from the thrift shop. And we got on the topic of discussion. I don't know how we landed there, but we got on the topic of discussion of Mott the Hoople and all the cool dudes and shit and whatnot. And it was funny to find out. I never knew after all these years, because I just wasn't really that in tune with it, that Bowie pretty much produced that album for him and got them out there after they had been out there and everybody had respected them for so long, but they never got the break, kind of like the New York Dolls thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I thought that was really fucking cool.
Yeah, Bowie basically saved the band, because I think they're about ready to get dropped. And I think Bowie, one of Bowie's favorite bands, was Mott the Hoople. And then he wrote 2 songs, Suffragette City and All the Young Dudes for Ian and Mott the Hoople. And Ian's like, we'll take this one. And then it worked out pretty damn good, and it saved the band. And of course, Ian Hunter, that's another guy, man. He's 85 years old and he's still out there making great music. Put out, 2 phenomenal records, Defiance Part 1 and 2. And, I think those were the final performances of Jeff Beck and Taylor Hawkins.
Oh, wow.
On his records. But I met Ian, man. Ian's a great guy. I remember last time I saw him, we spent an afternoon drinking Samuel Adams, and he was puffing away on those Marlboro Reds. And I mean, like I said, this was 10 years ago, and he's just timeless. And as a matter of fact, a funny story, a lot of people know this, is we went to a 7-Eleven in Belmar, New Jersey, right? And walked in, and Ian wears that floppy hat and those shades.
Yeah.
And those guys, they got freaked out when I walked in the 7-Eleven with Ian Hunter. They didn't think he was any kind of celebrity type. And till this day, they always ask me, how's your buddy with the floppy hat? and I always say to them, that's Ian Hunter, man. That's Mott the Hoople. That's, all the great solo stuff. All the young dudes, Roll Away the Stone. They're like, well, just tell them we said what's up. But they got nervous by the great Ian Hunter. Until this day, they still ask for him.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, but Ian, as you said with David Bowie, he saved that band's career. And, it's amazing. what Ian Hunter's doing at 85. Listen to his last two records, Defiance Part 1 and 2. These are some of the best music he's ever written in his career. And I've been a fan, since the Mott the Hoople days. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. It's so funny how Bruce and I often talk about when we're doing shows, how things kind of end up clicking. And we were doing, I think one of you guys who gave us the Red Cross album?
No, I gave you the Red Cross.
Okay, so
yeah.
I was doing a Red Cross album review, and he would be doing the same time a Typo Negative review. And the funny thing about that is Typo Negative got their name because the Red Cross was low on Typo Negative blood.
Look at that.
And it's just crazy how these connections end up happening, man. It's just like,
I'm sure
shit,
Kevin
man.
Bacon was weaved in there somewhere, but we didn't dig that far.
Yeah, he's weaved in everything, man, that guy, right? Yeah. That's so fun. And by the way, I love Red Cross. I am a huge fan of Red Cross. Which album? The new one? The current one?
No, the Teen Babes of Monsanto.
Oh, yes. The cover's record.
I think I gave it a solid rating. It was really good, if I remember.
They did, remember the show Bewitched?
Yeah.
One of the songs they covered was from the show Bewitched. I think.
I forget the name of the song.
Blow Me a Kiss in the Wind. Yeah, they were great. A funny story is I went to see Red Cross last summer, and I haven't seen them since like the 90s when I saw them at Maxwell's in Hoboken, and they were doing Crazy Horses.
Yes.
And the Dictators covered that.
Mm-hmm.
So all of a sudden I'm watching the show, and somebody came up to me and goes, "Hey man, they're covering the Dictators right now." And I'm like, they're actually covering the Osmonds, but thank you for, it was originally an Osmond song.
Well, dude, do you remember when I first realized somebody at my buddies at the record store was telling me, "Oh, you got to listen to this Osmonds," and they put on Crazy Horses. I was texting you like, "The fuck? I'm today years old when I realized that was the Osmonds, not you guys."
What's funny is the Osmonds, man, got into Black Sabbath, right? They were listening to Sabotage, and Donny Osmond or one of the Osmonds was digging Sabbath, and like, let's go heavy. Let's get away from this pop image. And that is as a matter of fact,
it's a great record.
Great record. It was just playing at Duff McKagan. Duff McKagan.
Yeah.
That show, Three Chords and the Truth. I'm listening to it, and he's playing that Osmonds record. Legendary.
I am going to have to scope this thing out.
Oh yeah, you gotta. You'll never believe it's the Osmonds.
That's crazy. I love shit phenomenal. Like that, though, man. I love shit like that.
Yeah, me too.
Well, I know that you got a new album just dropped. Let's talk about that, man. I definitely want to shed some light on that. Bruce, you got anything you want to discuss on that?
No, I didn't even realize he had an album. No, just kidding. Law of Diminished Returns.
I guess we could just go ahead and shut the show down. We're good. Yeah. It's been good seeing you all. Have a good night.
Good seeing you guys. Let me know when you need me back. I'm always down to talk whatever.
No, man. I mean, you've gotten so much positive reviews on this album. Talk a little bit about like what, how long did this thing take, and like how are you, just what's your general vibe? What are you feeling off this album?
I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of it. Listen, there's one thing I learned many years ago, especially in the early 90s, is not to chase nothing. Just be happy in what you do. And if you like what you do, there's a success right there. So I'm really proud of the record. It took probably started doing it in 22, but it wasn't supposed to be, a solo record. At that time, the Dictators, we were talking about making an album, and Frankenstein, it was getting to that point to make a new Frankenstein record. So I recorded a couple tunes. I demoed them to the point where there actually would be bed tracks where they'd be, used on, final, building a track that would be used for a recording. And my buddy Danny from the band Angel, Danny Aniello, said to me, he goes, Keith, man, Frankenstein is cool and you got a lot of stuff out there. And I know you're going to put out, this compilation thing. Why don't you just call it Keith Roth? Some of these songs are a little bit different, for Frankenstein and the Dictators. And he goes, people know you from radio and people know you from Frankenstein. You just kind of bring everybody together. And like the floodgates opened at that point. And then it was like, all right, it's my record. And I got to say, my buddy Mike Jaffe, was my partner in crime on it. Because when I explained to him what I wanted to do, that it was, and because he did play in Frankenstein, I said, I want to make a solo record, which means there's no rules. And he's like, dude, let's take the journey. And we jumped in his studio and my studio. And once that happened, and I knew the title, because I always said as a joke for many years that if I make a solo record, it's going to be called The Law of Diminished Returns, because it's the truest thing ever. You have a beer, right? It's your best beer.
Yeah.
Maybe the second one, and then it just starts diminishing,
Yeah.
like anything else. Drugs, whatever the case may be, movies, or follow up. I mean, so, but all of a sudden, it just took on a different light. And then it was very prolific time for me because, there was a couple new songs I wanted to record for that Frankenstein comp. And then obviously Dictators working on a record, but it got to the point where I knew which file it should go into. And then eventually when the Dictators record was done and I put the compilation to bed, and it took a while for them both to come out, but then I was like, there's a concept to the record. It's kind of autobiographical. It's kind of everything from my youth to now, or people that I've known. A lot of true stories in there, a lot of stories that I've seen through people that I know. And then, I got to the end of the journey, and I was very nervous with my name on it. And, but the first single really kind of took off. Don't Feel Like Thinking Today. And I was like, all right, well, the rest of the record is different somewhat, but, and then there's a couple covers on there, Superfly. Bob Pantella from the band Monster Magnet plays drums on most of the record. There's other, Albert plays on a couple tunes, and Tiny from TSOL and the Bullet Boys, he plays on there. My buddy Rob Liano, who I played with for a long time in a variety of different bands. But, Bob, a lot of the early beginnings of the record we recorded there, and we recorded the first song for the record. We recorded a song called Pain. And while we were in there, I was like, I always wanted to cover Curtis Mayfield, and we're always kind of fiddling around with it, at practice. And then we kind of laid it down, and then Bob kind of tweaked it a little bit and sent me a rough mix of it with all that great percussion on it. And then I'm like, man, all right, now I gotta jump into the seat and really, really dive in, to pay tribute to Curtis Mayfield. And when I heard that final mix, because that Bob mixed that song. I mean, all the songs were mixed by Brian Anthony, but Bob Pantella mixed that song. And I said, no matter what, this song is part of my youth, and it's a cover, and it's going to be on the album. And the other cover is Lou Reed's Straw Man. And the reason at that point I had finished writing the record. I knew the record was done. The cycle was over. This is the group of songs. And but I wanted to get Ross the Boss from the Dictators on there. And Ross, you know what he sounds like playing with the Dictators. You know him from Manowar. But Ross is a huge B.B. King fan. Huge B.B. King fan. His favorite record is Live at the Regal. And I was like, I got to get Ross to play on my record, but play like B.B. King. And we both love Lou Reed. And that's one song I always wanted to cover. So even though the record was kind of done, I said, all right, let's track strong. We did that. We recorded the bed track in like 45 minutes.
Wow.
So it was really quick. I mean, me and Mike Jaffe laid down the guitars and the bass, and we sent it over to Rob that night. He nailed it in the studio. And then I sent it over to Ross, he agreed like 6 o'clock. He had it like the wee hours of the morning, and he laid it down the next day. And he's like, what do you think? And I'm like, what do you mean? What do I think? I said, just play like B.B. King. And that's what he did. And so I knew that had to be on the record. So that's the bookends of the journey, on there. Yeah. I'm really proud of the record, and hopefully we get to go out and support it. I know we got a couple shows coming up with Foghat that we're looking forward to playing, under my name, and hopefully more to come.
Now, who would you take out on the road with you to do this?
The first show we're doing is May 17th at the Patchogue Theater in Patchogue, New York. So in that band, that's going to be Scott Burton, who plays in a band called the Moroccan Sheep Herders, who actually did play on, they're a big Jersey band, they play.
Hell yeah.
But he actually did play bass on Superfly and on Go Away on the album. And Tiny from TSOL is playing drums, and Mike will be playing guitar. I'll be playing guitar. So that'll be and the girls, Kingston and Graystar. are going to be singing backgrounds, which they're all over the record. So that's the first show, May 17th. The one in July, I'm not sure yet, but it's the cool thing about, having it under your name, a revolving door, Don't be surprised if I get like the Dictators to back me up one night or something like that.
Hell yeah.
But they'll want Dictators money, which is Taco Bell.
Or White Castle.
Yeah, definitely. White Castle for sure. They should be in the White Castle Hall of Fame.
No doubt. I definitely wanted to point out Nick McMillan's slide guitar on that song was great. Strawman was actually one of my favorite. I would call it almost like a deep track. But you and Boss, first off, I love the message of that song. And again, Lou Reed recorded that how many years ago?
In the 80s.
It still holds true.
Yeah, I mean, and he references a lot of people that are prevalent today. And, the album is called New York, and it's such an amazing journey. There's two records that came out around that time. Tom Waits did Rain Dogs, which
I had Bruce review it.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
The funny thing is there's a song in there called Graveyard Polka on the Tom Waits record. And now between that and Strawman, I was going back and forth about which one I wanted to do because, we're New Yorkers and it's a New York, both of them to me are very New York records. So, and I had Ross in mind, but I mean, Lou Reed, his clairvoyancy is unbelievable. And that New York record, I might like it more than Transformer. That might be my favorite solo Lou Reed record. So it was. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, for sure. But that slide guitar on Pain. Jesus.
Oh yeah.
I tag. I'm like, dude, who's playing the fucking slide on this?
Yeah. He didn't get properly credited either, Nick McMillan, because he does some of the lead stuff on there as well. He does some of the slides. Now I met Nick. Nick is a Canadian guy. He's a kid, even though he's probably watched this. He's in his early 20s. And I met him when the Dictators were up in Canada. And we were playing in London, Ontario. And I think his band was opening. And Andy was not happy with the bass amp that they had for him. And Nick had an SVT. And this kid went home and got an SVT for Andy Chernoff. And then I said, dude, if you want to come, we're playing in Hamilton tomorrow night. And he was a really great kid, one of those kids that you just, you just want to give him a hug. He's such a nice dude. And he came the next night and we kept in touch ever since. And then I started hearing his band and his guitar playing. I mean, the kid's incredible. And he's into, Rose Tattoo. He's such an old soul and the Ramones, and he's into everything, Miles Davis. So I wanted him to play, Pain needed something and he brought the pain, it was great. He's great. Nice. Great kid.
Now, standout tracks on the album for me, man, I really loved Cosmic Scene. That was probably my favorite.
Wow, me too.
Superfly was really, really good cover there. What It Means and Moonglade. I wanted to mention those two because while I really liked that middle section really kind of spoke a lot to me, it really felt like What It Means and Moonglade were just cohesive, and I thought that was a really fucking cool. It's happened recently on another album here I reviewed, and I don't know if it's intentional, but it sounds good when it happens. You know what I mean?
So sequencing is important. Doing radio for so many years, man, like, you hear records and then sometimes they, the band gets a hold of it, not the label. And then they resequence it and you're like, okay, now I understand. Because a great record could be ruined by a bad sequence. So it took me forever to sequence the album.
Bruce and I have discussed this 1,000 times on the show, man. It just placement of a song. It could have bad opener. This could have been a better opener. Bad closer. This could have been a better closer. Well, why was this here? It didn't make sense. It just stuck out like a hard dick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm not staying at your house anymore. I just know that. Next, he'll be asking you off air if he can borrow Ross's loincloth or something, you know?
Well, Ross claims he never wore a loincloth. He gets very offended by that. He'll when you say that, he'll send pictures of all the other guys wearing loincloths. I've done that to him on stage. I'm surprised he hasn't punched me in the face yet. Maybe on the Little Steven cruise he will.
Yeah. Man, that's coming up here soon, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, a couple of weeks, right? May 9th. We're looking forward to it. We finally just dove into the rehearsals of Go Girl Crazy. We're doing that record in its entirety.
Oh, nice. Wow, man.
Yeah. So we started Saturday, but Ross has been over I think he's in Australia now. I think he's coming back tonight with the Ross the Boss band. But me, Andy, and Albert got together and we were playing I Got You, Babe, and Teen Generate and all those songs. So, we got a couple more practices because everybody's busy, everybody's doing other stuff, but we're looking forward to jump on the ship and hopefully we might have to rehearse on the ship for that show.
Yeah.
Just speaking of ship incidents, man, that thing with Tammy Down's fiance, man, that was a bit of a mind blower back there a couple weeks ago, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, I mean, because I jumped on the Monsters of Rock cruise right after that, and all those guys were on the Monsters of Rock cruise afterwards, and those guys are really good friends of mine. Like, I love Chad, the drummer for Faster Pussycat. He's a great guy, and Ace Van Johnson's a good friend of mine. He plays with LA Guns as well, and I mean, poor Tammy, man, he was stuck in a room for a week, and he wasn't allowed to leave the room, and but obviously people know that sadly something I feel bad, man. His fiance for 8 years and had a moment.
I saw a lot of Ricky Rackman's pretty close with Tammy,
right?
And I was watching a bunch of Facebook videos on it, man, and he was kind of just giving updates on what was going on with him, because I'll tell you,
Tammy's a great guy. He's a really good guy.
I think there was a period of time that he was being taken advantage of, though, man, to be honest with you. Bruce will tell you, when it comes to the hair metal days, I still love that stuff and stuff that came out of that era. But Faster Pussycat to me is one of the unsung heroes, because those guys did not put out a horrible album to this day, to this fucking day. And man, just it's sad. It's truly sad, But
when that working on Hair Nation, I always say is my favorite band of this genre. But I'm being honest, because they reminded me of the New York Dolls. They reminded me more of a 70s rock band. They played the Gibsons. They weren't. They were just. It was like Aerosmith. It was like the New York Dolls. It was just a great hard rock throwback band. I always felt that they could have went unscathed when the door shut on a lot of those bands.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, and I think those first 3 albums. The first one is a punk rock record to me. The second one was even better in a certain way. And then the one that nobody listened to because that whole scene had changed was Whipped. And there was it was a great tribute to Andrew Wood, because Tammy's a Seattle kid. Andrew Wood from Mother Love Bone. They were buddies, and he wrote that to him on there. That was a really great record. All 3 of those.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Like I truly do dig Faster Pussycat, including, I think the last release they did was The Power and the Glory Hole. And I thought about giving that to Bruce on the show one time here in the future, but it's a great album. He does a tribute to what the hell is her name, man? Bye Bye Bianca. Who was Bianca that passed away? She was I want to say a front woman bassist for somebody that was close to Timey. But I
got to be honest, I don't know that one. I know the recent singles that they released. That one was Nola, and then they did a Johnny Thunders cover, which I thought was really cool. And but now I dig that band, so I'm gonna definitely search that record out.
It definitely had some electronic feel to it. At some point in time, it was kind of that phase of Faster Pussycat that was there for a second, but it's still a great album, man. Yeah, definitely check it out, man.
I will. I remember
if I was going to give you an album to recommend, I'd give you that album to recommend.
That's a good one because I like the band. I know he was doing that electronic stuff, the Newly Deads with the guy from Bang Tango back in the '90s. I remember that was some cool stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, it was but seeing those guys on that cruise, I mean, they were shaken up because they were concerned about. I felt bad because the guy, he lost his fiance and was stuck in a room where he wasn't allowed to leave, and I know Ace was telling me that he was in the room with him, and so I just felt bad. And then and the cruise was amazing. I've done those 5 years in a row. I think that was my 7th cruise total, but I was on stage with the band, Ted Poley, Ted Poley from the band. I'm having a 30 something Danger. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
And I know Ted, he's a Jersey guy. And, I went to see them at one of their shows. I was coming back from an event and they brought me on stage. We're all up on stage, Chad from Faster Pussycat, and we're playing. And the drummer, and Mark Doobie, who plays with Ted Poley, was also in Frankenstein, 3000. So they're all my buddies are playing, and then, the drummer, a great guy. And, we're on stage and he's, we're all smiling at each other. We finished the song. We're all singing along to like Naughty, Naughty. And I walk off the stage. I'm the first one walking off. And when I got off, I just waited for the guys for, high fives, let's go get a beer or whatever. And all of a sudden I see Ted jump over the drum kit. And then I see Mark Dubé jump over the drum kit. And then I see Paulie, the drummer, fall down. And I'm and I'm thinking there's a fight going on. And these are my Jersey buddies. And I'm like, all right, what's going on? And then Tyson, who plays with everybody, said, he collapsed. He had a heart attack.
That's right.
Shit.
But the weird thing about it was 20 seconds before he's smiling and there he was down to the last, the ending, the last 5 hits and boom, 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 boom. And then, and it was crazy. And, I got emotional, man, because, they said, no, I thought he was dead. And I think he did die for a couple.
Yes.
But Mark, and then everybody, they got him out of the venue. Mark Dubé jumped on him, was giving him CPR, and he kept him afloat until the paramedics got there. And I didn't know if he had passed away or not. And then Mark met us, about an half hour later and said that he's all right. His vitals are back. And I'm like, right on. And I know he's back home, but there were some interesting things going on, man, and I'm glad Paulie's all right. And I know he got out of the hospital. The first thing he did is got a burger.
Why not?
That'd be me, man. I wouldn't bullshit you. That'd be me.
But those cruises are fun. Have you guys ever been on them?
No,
he's been on a cruise.
I've
not
got
a rock cruise, but
I've cruised before. But I've got close friends that's now become a big thing for them. Instead of trying to go to so many festivals. As a matter of fact, I meant to bring it up for the show and kind of discuss it. I got my tickets or my VIP passes to Sonic Temple this year. So,
oh, nice.
Looking forward to seeing Acid Bath, man. I'm a huge doom, sludge, stoner metal kind of guy. That's why the magnet thing's a big thing to me, man.
You like Atomic Bitchwax?
Yeah, I'm familiar with those guys. I like so just to not to take too much from the show, I was with a band for 20 years called Suspect Earth here in Columbus, and we took a lot of influence from Monster Magnet. Just those early Magnet albums really resonated with us, and we kind of felt like we knew about something that nobody else did. And by the time fucking what was it, Space Lord hit the air, we're just like, you already missed like 6 albums.
Yeah,
so
I agree. Listen, Dave Wintorf is my brother, man. I love that guy. And, I love talking to Dave, and he is one of those guys that is truly a musicologist. And he's turned me on to so much great music throughout the years. He got me into Granicus. He's got me into Highway Robbery. I mean, everything that he recommends, movies, books, albums. I mean, he's just a musicologist, and he's my dude. I mean, I love Dave. He's a great guy, a really great guy. I love Monster Magnet. And yes, we were all hip to it before, Monolithic, Power Trip.
Yeah.
The breakthrough record. But, Spine of God, incredible record, Superjet, So
I love Dave's punk stuff.
What's that?
That first band he was in with that punk band.
Shrapnel.
Yeah.
Shrapnel.
That's some cool stuff.
My friend Beth Halloran took me to see them when I was in high school, and I was blown away how Combat Love, and then they got Michael Alago, who you probably saw his documentary, the guy that signed Metallica and White Zombie, and his first signing was Shrapnel, So
Wow.
he's like brothers with like Dave and Daniel, and Daniel was in Manitoba's Wild Kingdom. It's a big incestuous circle in Jersey here, but yeah, Windorf from Monster Magnet, I love the guy. He's a legend. He's a legend in my mind.
Yeah. Ours too, man. So to your album, what are some of your favorite tracks on this new album?
I mean, I like Moonglade a lot because we had a lot of fun doing that. It was like, all right, let's Husker Du, Grand Heart, let's just jam.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw some melodies, and I want to sing like Randy Bachman. I want to make the melody really obvious, Metropolitan Girl, Randy Bachman, how he did like, you ain't seen nothing yet. So it was like, I just was like having fun with the melody. And Mike, was playing just that crazy guitar. I was playing with that riff and the bass. And then his son, Aiden, who's quite a talented kid, and he jumped on the keyboards. And I'm like, dude, Dandy Warhol's it, Brian Jonestown it. Let's just have some fun with it. And when it was done, I'm like, this is great. To me, it was great. And I'm glad it made it on the record. And it's a true story, but I hope it turns into one of those Carly Simon things. Like, what was
You're So Vain?
You're So Vain. Yeah. I could only hope somebody will ask me, what's it all about? But it was fun. That's one of my favorite tracks. And, Think of Today's Fun was a fun song. I like that one. Pain's been around for a long time. Cosmic Scene, though, that was one of those songs that it was an afternoon. I was going to Mike's to do some recording that night, and I was just fiddling with the guitar, and I just did that progression, that A to D to C sharp thing. And, I was just in a very, I think I was hungover, and the lyrics just came out. And somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago that, they got the record and they thought it reminded them of that band Luna. And I like Luna, they made, I love that album Bewitched. And I'm like, that's pretty cool, because, it's, Hawkwind, psychedelic, Roger Waters, they're all in there. I'm not going to lie who my influences are. I wear them on my sleeve, So, I'm glad that Tony liked that one.
Yeah. I loved how, it actually faded into the song. Normally you got the fade out at the end. I love that fade in. I'm like, man, I don't hear that.
And that's why I thought what it means in Moonglade seemed really connected, because if I remember correctly, what it means kind of fades out, but then Moonglade kind of fades in. And I just like, man, this seems to have connected pretty sweetly there. And I didn't know if that was on purpose or.
It was just ideas, after a lot of the, I got to give kudos to Brian Anthony, who mixed the record, and he mastered it. And it was really, when I think of the guys that were really involved, besides myself, it's Mike and Brian. And, I'm just thinking of some of the fights toward the end. I got to laugh to myself. But, it was these little things about fade ups and fade ins and, spending ridiculous amount of time on this stuff. But I was just like nonstop. I guess I was sort of turning into a dickhead, by the end. I think there was a point where I don't think Mike and Brian wanted to talk to me anymore. And then once the record came out, I made the peace with everybody. But, you have a vision, and I love those guys for really trying to help me create the vision. So I heard what you heard about that fade down, fade up with Moonglade, and, Brian got it. So, those were the MVPs, and, Bob Pantella, he was an MVP because of what he did on Superfly. But all this stuff was really like it was a journey, and it was kind of like all the answers were just waiting there. So I'm really, really, I really owe a lot to those guys for really taking the journey with me. Mike and Brian, they were major players in that.
Yeah, for sure. Honest to God, man, this is a great rock and roll record.
Thank you, Bruce.
It really is. It's just like, fuck.
See, and that brings me back to like the stuff with Frankenstein 3000, and the Dictators and whatnot. you could tell that the Dictator still has that pre-punk sound, throughout their catalog, and still and still touch their foot in it. But consistently, even with the new Dictators album and the Frankenstein 3000 stuff that we've heard, as well as this album, the sentiment seems to ring the same. Just good rock and roll, man. Like we're going to give it to you, and we're going to give it to you good.
Yeah.
And I dig it, man. I dig it. I have yet to hear anything. I haven't felt the need to, man, what were you thinking when you write that?
Well, the Dictators, is Andy Chernoff's baby. He started the band. I was a fan of the band as far back as I can remember. I think when we talked about it when we were all on your show, my brother went to kindergarten with Manitoba and with Scott Kempner. So, I mean, those names have been around me as far back as I can remember, and the Go Girl Crazy. But, being in a band with Andy and, just the way he really pays attention to detail with songwriting. And it was cool with this record where he knew that, me and Albert and Ross are writers. So, we contributed. But, you watch Andy and the way he just kind of does these subtle little things, and it's really genius. And, I love and respect the way that, everything really counts to him. And so with the, but when to me, when I hear Frankenstein and the Dictators, there's really not a much, it's just like, as you said, it's just, a rock and roll thing. So that's where riding the line of, a couple songs, I offered Thinking Today to the Dictators.
Mm-hmm.
We're kind of like uncertain about it. And I'm like, okay, it's the album opener on the record. But, I mean, we all come from that same school, if you grew up on the Stooges and the Who and Led Zeppelin and Cream and, and the punk rock, the Dead Boys, the list goes on. Everybody has, there's that school of rock. There's another school of rock, I mean, so, but I hate to, and I know this may sound cheesy, but Billy Joel, right? It's,
yeah.
Oh no, not by any means.
It's still rock and roll to me,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's what I love about you guys, I mean, like, your diversity in your show and the stuff that, when you mention bands like Red Cross, that people are not really hip to, I love that because, I feel like a band like Red Cross should be a household name,
Yeah.
I think that, when we were growing up in the 70s, in the 80s, everything that you heard on the radio, you think back how really great it was. Maybe when you're hearing it, like, it wasn't that cool, but man, growing up in the radio, all these songs were great,
Yep.
All the stuff, Fleetwood Mac, Rumors, like, all these records and and they're talking about Dave Windorf, all these other bands that never made it that he was hip to, David Johnson would tell me that he would go to the record store by him and all the singles that didn't make it, they would go into this big bag and they would put them in a bag and they'd be like, okay, to get rid of them, they were $1. And David used to go in there and buy these bags of singles. And that's how he discovered all these great acts that never became mainstream. He couldn't wait to walk in there. Oh, I don't have this bag of singles. And he would go home and it's like, this is amazing. And then I was, kind of honored that David would turn me on to so much great music. So, Dave and Dave, Windorf, Hanson, man, those guys, taught me a lot about bands that, we fancy ourselves as musicologists, but those guys, it's next level.
Yeah.
Bruce and I in high school, I hate to interrupt, Bruce, but you and I in high school, I think we realized early on that the radio wasn't quite where it was at. Like if you wanted to, like I never heard Fraley on the radio or Fraley's Comet on the radio. I had to find that, you know what I mean? And the very first time that I heard anything that was like, that I had never heard off the radio or wasn't really familiar with off the radio, I heard Suicidal Tendencies Institutionalized. And my wig was just completely blown back. And I have to know more. And that was my entry level into diving as much as I could. And with the invention of the internet, man,
we didn't have that though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that made it so much more fun.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little frustrating, but it was fun, like searching out stuff. I mean, you mentioned Suicidal Tendencies, Institutionalized, the Repo Man, one of my favorite movies ever, and buying that soundtrack after seeing the movie. And then that was on there.
Yeah.
I mean, and Emilio Estevez, like he was like, the poster child of punk rock, LA punk in 84.
Who knew?
Otto, right? He played Otto Parts. I mean, that movie was just brilliant. I mean, and the soundtrack was great. that was my discovery of suicidal tendencies.
Yeah. Just
But the beauty of music, man. And
Yeah.
that's why all the great bands to me are the guys in the band are music fans. Duff McKagan, you listen to his show. I mean, Joe Elliott from the band Def Leppard. You could talk to Joe for hours about music until you mention Def Leppard, But he'll talk to you about Mott the Hoople and Bowie and Queen, and that's why I love these guys, because fans first and foremost, and they never lost that, even all the years of being through the meat grinder as a musician, and that's a cool thing,
See, and that's one of the things that Bruce and I love about the show is we bring these two different perspectives. And are they hugely broad? No, but I think we cover a lot of different things. Like, you'll never know what we're going to end up covering on the show. Just know that. What is it? We have Women's Month, we have Black History Month. Those are dedicated to those time frames. And, there's just so much out there. And when I say good rock and roll, that seems to be the consistent thing with stuff like what you're doing. And I mentioned to Bruce 1,000 times. I actually went and got to see these guys on their last run, the Winery Dogs.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, you've got Billy Sheehan, Mike Portnoy, and give me a second here, Richie Kotzen. Masters at what they do, but making great rock and roll, man. You know what I mean? There's some technicality there, of course, because of the people you're dealing with, but it just sounds amazing. You know what I mean? It's just good rock and roll. And I think that's something that's consistent throughout your catalog.
Well, thank you. I mean, the funny thing is that Frankenstein 3000 actually did a couple dates with the Winery Dogs on. We played a couple theaters with them not that long ago. Obviously, the last tour. We did Keswick Theater where the power blew out, which was, and thankfully the town, scrapped the curfew that night. But exactly what you said, they reminded me a little bit of Soundgarden as far as the songs go. But watching this freak show of Portnoy and Sheehan and Richie Kotzen as players, but writing great music.
Oh, dude, you took the words right out of my mouth. You could put Richie Kotzen right in place of oh God, man, it's such a shame I can't remember his name.
I get it.
From Soundgarden.
Kim Thale?
No,
Cornell? Chris Cornell.
In place of Chris Cornell. Vocally, their vocal DNA is so fucking similar.
First night we were playing with them, I'm watching them. I'm like, this fucking guy sounds like Chris Cornell, man.
Yeah.
Because I knew I didn't really know much about Richie before we did those shows. I know he was in Poison for a minute, right? He did a Poison record, and then I think he played with Mr. Big, right? Or
maybe.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, but when they offered us to do a couple shows, I think we did 2 or 3. They were consecutive. My fondest memory though is the last night that we played with them. It was in Long Island, and it was me, Billy Sheehan, and Mark the Animal Mendoza came out to the gig. Former Dictator, Twisted Sister, and we're talking about the Stones. So Mark, Billy, and myself, and we're going through like Let It Bleed and Beggar's Banquet, and Mike Portnoy joins the conversation, and he said that, well, my favorite Stones record of all time is Satanic Majesty's Request, which was like such an oddball, but it was totally serious, and then it really became it's sort of like what we're doing right now, and I'm like, this is so cool. Sheehan loving the Stones and Portnoy, and just different perspectives of all these great records, and we geek out about music. But Winery Dogs, great. I guess they're done, right? Or
yeah, they're done, man. I think Sheehan's going to hang it up after the Mr. Big last run.
They're still on it, right?
Yeah, I think they're still on it or wrapping it up.
I remember seeing Billy Sheehan as a kid when he was playing with Tallis. I was like, a teenage kid, and watching this freak of a bass player like playing Close Encounters for the bass solo. I'm like, wow, and then joining David Lee Roth's band, like, that's next level shit. And my favorite record by Steve Vai was the Public Image Limited record that he played on. Yeah. You remember, you know that one?
Yeah. I'm a huge Vai fan, dude. Huge Vai fan. He is absolutely hands down my favorite guitarist.
He's great. I mean, and hear him playing with Johnny Ladden, Johnny Rotten, and him and Ginger Baker. Like, that's the
oh wow.
Oh yeah, the album called Album, or if you bought it on cassette, or disc.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's such a monumental record, and I know Vi really wanted to be in the band. Like I think he was doing this when he was in Alcatraz, but if Lydon would have picked him up as a touring guy, he may not have gotten the Roth gig, and he might have ventured into the alternative rock world, which would have been interesting, like Damascus. So, but anyway, kudos to Steve Vai, because that was an incredible record too.
Well, there's a lot of guys out there that can play technically, and,
Yep.
and they really know their instrument really well, but they lose feel. They lose the art of feel. You can't really feel the car. It's great you can play 100 notes a minute, but they lose the freaking and what?
Well, that's kind of what we
Eddie
was
and the Cruisers.
Yeah, well, no, that's kind of what we was talking about last time when you guys were on with Man of War. The difference between Ross and Michelangelo Badio, it's a completely different feel.
Yeah,
I'm just laughing because mention that name to Ross, and Ross is fun, man. I love the guy so much. The Man of War thing. I remember we were playing a gig with the Dictators back in the '90s, and Ross walked in the dressing room after the gig, and they were all chanting "Hail, hail to England!" He's a good sport. He hasn't gone postal yet, but
there's always tonight. You never know.
Yeah.
That's funny. That reminds me of Hail, hail to England. Reminds me of plugging our show for the next couple of weeks, our 420 special there, Bruce. Should we mention that real quick?
Yeah.
We are going to have John Paul Davis of Conan on for our 420 special.
Now, is that on 420 that you're doing it?
We're shooting at 419. It'll be released on 420.
So I think 420 this year's on a Sunday, right?
Yep.
It's on Easter, right?
Yep. Usually we do the shooting on Tuesdays, but John's over in England and we have to shoot on the weekend with him. So
that's all right.
I'm looking forward to it. It's a very exciting time for me. I got to meet him back in last year at the West Side Bowl here in Youngstown. Snapped a couple pictures with him. The guys signed the set list for me, and just got to really, just he's good to his fans, man. And I probably bought half the merch table. So
Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah.
When I think of Youngstown, I think of UFO. All the great stuff they did there. I think when the Dictators played in Kent, Ohio, which is pretty close to Youngstown, Ohio, at the Kent Theater. I just love Ohio, man. I love the people of Ohio. The way they love rock and roll, and it's it's one of those great rock and roll towns, like Cleveland. That whole run.
Listen, no matter who you're jamming with, okay, hear me out. No matter who you're jamming with, if you ever get the opportunity to book this venue, book this fucking venue. I swear to you, you are going to love it. The stage is separated from the crowd, but it's a bowling alley, dude. They cut the bowling alley in half. One side is the stage crowd area. The other side is bowling. No digital bullshit. You write everything down.
I love that.
There's a record store inside. There's a pizza shop inside, bar, obviously. And there's also a venue downstairs that will hold 200 people for another concert downstairs.
I heard about this place. You know who plays there? Played there? Soraya. You know the band Soraya?
Yeah.
They're on Little Steven's label. And my buddy Mike, who, Frankenstein, and, co-produced the record with me, he played there and he told me about this place in Ohio. And he said it was amazing. Pizza place, record store. He said it's all there.
Yeah, it's like I drove an hour and 45 minutes, maybe 2 hours, 15 minutes to get up there to go see Conan, and forget who was opening up for. Early Moods, man. And blown our doors off. Great night, great pizza, great experience. Beer prices were wonderful. They don't play with the Mary Jane in that area for some reason.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. They don't want it around the venue.
Fuck them. Just kidding. Hey, Keith, I did want to mention one of my favorite. I listen to a lot of podcasts because I drive a lot for my job, and one of my favorite podcasts is yours, Rockstrap. It is such a cool idea. It's such a cool premise. Like, you take these rock and roll guys and you talk about, maybe you sprinkle a little bit of music in, but you talk about sports. And one of the things I love is you bring these rock guys in and they don't know shit about sports, but they try.
They try. I know. You know, when we first started doing the podcast, we actually had like Jeremy Roenick. You know, we had some sports guys on there, and but you know, me and Don could sit there and talk about sports all day. But some of the beauty of it is that, you know, these guys, you know, they grew up as a Yankee fan or whomever, an Indians fan, and they had those childhood memories. But I find it hugely entertaining. I just love to kick back and listen to these cats, you know, their memories. I mean, eventually at some point we do plan on having, you know, well, we've had a lot of people. We just had Sean McNabb on the show. Sean's a bass player, played with like Quiet Riot and Rhino Bucket. He really knew sports. He was friends with Kobe, and you know, you get a lot of these other guys that really do know sports. But when we do get the rock guys that try,
I think it was Ace Van Johnson.
Oh, Ace. Well, he wasn't lying about it. He said, I spiked the ball at halftime. That was classic. Yeah, I spiked the ball at halftime. Yeah,
but that's also I think that's also the episode where I found out you're a Little League champion.
Yes.
So, you know,
Hope City Raiders, we won the championship. That was an insane period. You know, listen, all these years later, I'm still thinking about it. You know,
Nice.
Yeah.
I got it. I know we're running a little short of time, but one of the episodes you had with Dave LaGreca.
Yeah. I love Dave.
You were, me too. Busted Open's a really cool podcast. Everyone check that one out too. Anyway, you had mentioned kind of in passing that you were in the same apartment complex as Roddy Piper.
Yes.
Dude, do you have any Roddy Piper stories?
Well, my dad was friends with him. Like they used to, like, you know, my dad was a very lovable guy. And, you know, he was one of those guys, if you met him, you know, it was funny. Like friends I went to high school with that I didn't like, I'd come home and they'd be hanging out with my dad. I'm like, what the fuck? You know, like, but anyway, Roddy, for some reason, my parents lived in a complex. It was like a townhouse. It was, and a lot of the wrestling guys lived there, like Pedro Morales, or Pedro Morales. And, the Magnificent Morocco. And, but Roddy Piper. So my nephew was really into wrestling and he was scared to death of Roddy Piper. He was a bad guy. And my dad, you know, said, oh, I know who he is. So when my nephew came to visit, I think he talked to him and he said, hey, listen, can I send my nephew over? Maybe he'll sign an autograph for you. Yeah, send him over, Phil. You know, that was my dad's name, Phil. So my nephew didn't believe, you know, his grandfather, my dad, that he knew Roddy Piper. So they're walking, you know, he lived about, I don't know, quarter mile away. And they're walking, and he said, well, yeah, go knock on the door and say hi to Roddy. So when he knocked on the door, Roddy Piper opened the door, and he was a real bad guy at that point. And my nephew saw him, started crying, and just ran away. Just started boogieing away. And my father was dying laughing, you know. But Roddy was going to be nice to my nephew. So, yeah, that was, Highview Drive. It was a Highview Drive. Highview townhouses. It was a long time ago. It was in the early 80s.
Oh, yeah. He had so much heat on him back then. Like, he was amazing. He was one of my favorites for sure. So
my dad loved him. He said he was a great guy. And the other guy he used to walk the dog with, I don't know if you watch soccer, but do you remember the Cosmos? Ricky Davis.
Wow.
You know, so my dad would be, you know, it was, you know, right in Edison, Woodbridge, New Jersey. So it was perfect. You know, you're 35 minutes out of Manhattan. So a lot of those guys were living there at that point. So, Roddy Piper. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Keith, I'm pretty sure we're probably going to be wrapping this up, but I just wanted to get with you real quick. Where can everybody find the new album at?
Oh, anywhere, you know, decoentertainment.com, Amazon, you know, I guess all the, I know I did, I was on that show, Talk Shop Live, where I know I signed a bunch of, you know, vinyl. I actually just got the vinyl today I think I text you a picture, Bruce.
Yeah, absolutely.
I listened to it. It sounds great. It's blue vinyl. The inner sleeve is great. I was really, I know the people that ordered the vinyl, it was a delay because the first test pressing, we had to tweak it, but it sounds great now. I think they're shipping out on the 25th in a couple of weeks. Today is what, April 8th or something. But yeah. So, DecoEntertainment.com, Amazon, Talk Shop Live, people in Europe, if they listen, Juno's got it. It's out there.
And where can we find tour information for you?
I'm anti-social media, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. So, if you search me out on Facebook, we'll be posting stuff. But yeah, right now we got those 2 shows with Foghat. The first one is May 17th at the Patchogue Theater. It's a great theater. We played there with the Winery Dogs. And another theater that Frankenstein's played there a ton of times, the Keswick Theater right outside of Philly. That's July 11th. And more dates to come. Dictators. We're out on the Little Steven cruise next month, May 9th. And then we got some stuff coming together now for the fall. So, over the next couple of weeks, a lot of stuff's going to get out there.
Good deal, man.
Now, but I'm glad you guys like the record, man.
Love it.
Sounds absolutely excellent. As you know, as you've been a guest on here before, next week we need to review an album. Do you have an album you'd like us to review?
Something new or anything?
Anything. You know the deal. Anything.
Wow. Okay.
As a guest, this is your treat.
Okay. Give me a second to think about it. An album to review. What's really good? Could it be really old?
It can be with anything.
Anything you want, as long as we can get our hands on it.
Now, I love the band, Parliament Funkadelic, right?
Okay.
And, one of my Jersey band, they have Parliament Funkadelic Way now in Plainfield, New Jersey. And the great Eddie Hazel, one of the most underrated guitar players on the planet, the great George Clinton. But my all-time favorite Parliament record, and I believe that Lenny Kravitz made a career from listening to this album, and he still listens to it, is Osmium. And to me, that is a top 5 desert island disc. If Noah's waiting outside on the ark, and he said you could bring 5 records, I guarantee you that Parliament Osmium will be one of those records. And and it was their first album. And it's before they got really into the funky stuff. They were very much, Jimi Hendrix. They were, Jersey, but they were also kind of had a faction in Detroit. And it's just a great rock and roll, acid, sludgy rock record with so many great harmonies. So there it
is.
Parliament Osmium.
Dude,
and
awesome.
As we will to you, I've said earlier, check out the Faster Pussycat album, The Power and the Glory Hole. Think you might dig that. Bruce, you got an album for him?
I gave him one a few days ago, that new Darkness album.
Okay.
I did listen to it.
What'd you think?
I absolutely listened to it. I went to the gym. I ran to the whole album, and it was really, really cool. I thought it was really good. I did the Q&A with those guys, and they are characters, man. Justin is a character. You got Roger Taylor from Queen's Son playing drums. It's almost like the young ones on meth. I'm a big fan of Permission to Land. I really like the record. It's very AC/DC, and they love AC/DC. It's just a great rock and roll record, and that's on my list to get that on vinyl. I dug it.
Yeah,
good call.
Good deal.
Absolutely.
Good deal.
Keith, I got one last question, then we'll let you go. Record Store Day, just in a few days. What are you looking forward to getting?
Well, Over the Edge soundtrack. It's first pressing since 1979, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. Matt Dillon's first film, where the teenage kids all move to this development, and they're promised this and this, and then they rebel and they take over the town. It's classic 70s. They took it out of the theaters because Warriors was going on at that point, and they were afraid more shit was going to start. But the soundtrack with Cheap Trick and the Ramones and so many Van Halen was great. That's one thing I'm looking at. Neurotic Outsiders coming out on vinyl. The one with Steve Jones from the Pistols and McKagan. those are two things, but I'll bop into a record store, and record store day is a really cool holiday, man.
Yeah.
And I love the way it grows every year, and just people like go out, and you got one day to get that unique piece of vinyl. So, but yeah, I would say Over the Edge and Neurotic Outsiders top of my list.
Absolutely. Top of my list is the re-release of DFFD by the Dictators. So
That's on there too.
Yep.
Bruce knows if he finds two to grab me one.
Yeah, DFFD. I know, and the guy that mastered my record, the great Brian Anthony, remastered DFFD, and I did get a test pressing of it, and it sounds. Can I curse on it?
Yeah.
It sounds fucking awesome. And also, there's a bonus track on there, Sonic Reducer.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
Yeah. Sonic Reducer's on there, which is a great version of it that's never been released before. So if you love DFFD, this is like DFFD. Really
Deluxe.
Good. Really good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Good
well,
deal.
Keith, we greatly appreciate it. Everyone, please make sure you go out and check out The Law of Diminished Returns. Available everywhere. Also catch the latest Frankenstein 3000 album, Lost in Space Volume 1. So we know Volume 2 is coming up, so you can't be behind, kids.
I hope so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope so. I mean, Volume 1, real quick, it's a compilation of 25 years of tracks. I put a lot of time, love, and effort into it, and I'm really proud of that record, because not sure if there's going to be a Volume 2. So when the idea came about, I was like, you know what? I'm going to look at this as a quintessential Frankenstein 3000 record. And a lot of the early stuff didn't have proper distribution. So a lot of stuff we were able to remix, recut, some stuff from all the other records on there. And of course, my brother from another mother, David Johansen's on there with Babylon. And my one of my dearest friends who sadly passed away a few months ago, Tommy Tafaro, who's a guy that I played with for so many years. I played with him in Frankenstein for 10 years and the Johansen group, and just very sad, but he's a big part of that record. So yeah, check out Lost in Space Volume 1. Hopefully there will be a Volume 2.
Yeah.
We're pushing for it.
Good deal.
Well, good.
Good deal.
Good.
All right. Well, Keith, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for dropping in. Sure, we'll reach out and we'll hang out again sometime soon.
I look forward to it, man. I love you guys.
Love you too, dude.
Wonderful release coming out, or already released, as far as those two albums that Bruce mentioned, Frankenstein 3000 and the Law of Diminished Returns. Man, you guys got to definitely check that out. I've been kind of jamming that all day today and for the last week. Definitely get to checking that out, and be sure to check out Keith over there on the Book of Faces. Apparently he's over there. Other than that, I'm Bruce.
I'm Tone. And who's that?
Keith Roth.
That's right.
And we're hooked on Sonics. Thanks for hanging out.
See ya.